All right. Again, I have to make apologies for my classes. I feel like every lecture I have a new cold. It's amazing or something. Well, that's how it goes. All right. Um, so I'm adding this portion on for the first time on the Celts and Germanic tribes as a supplement to my covering of Christianity. And this is going to be very incomplete, along with the reading that you have. But it gives me an opportunity to just discuss a few things. So this is a really not going to be as developed as I want it to be. And as you see, we are covering a lot on this particular section, mainly because what I want you to realize is that being a part of Western civilization and a civilization dominated by Christianity, we often don't realize how complex this development came about and what a long stretch of time that brought us to getting something as standard as we think is what we just call the Bible, as if it was just magically dropped from heaven and given to us in the shape that it's and form that it is. Um, and and also this vague notion about what European society was like prior to Christianity, and why is it vague, and why do we have very little being talked about here? Okay, so I'm just going to address, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be able to really explain it as much as just address it to you in a way that hopefully will help you if you're interested to study more later on. Okay, so in regards to the Celts, that's a term that we now use. Um, there could be various other forms in which we could address these people, these tribes, okay, that we go back several centuries before Jesus in Western Europe. Also, we talked about Gaelic peoples. Um, and part of the problem, no, the main problem that we have and why we talk so little about these peoples and then later the Germanic tribes is because they were non-literate societies. And as non-literate societies, that means that they didn't leave behind a literary tradition for us to go through. So think about, those Mesopotamian texts and those ancient Egyptian texts are way older, but they left us something to read, to decipher. We don't get that with the Celts people, a broad term that we use for all these various linguistic groups that are related to each other. What I want you to think about Europe several centuries before Rome, okay, really dominates. Think of it as the same as Africa or America, North America prior to European settlement or invasions or colonizations. So in other words, we have tribal societies that are clan-based that rely on oral traditions to be passed on by people like druids, as names of their spiritual leaders, that have like poems memorized with incantations, with histories and stories of the gods and battles and all that. Okay, now the same thing is going to be in the true of the Germanic tribes that we talk about a little later. So should really, I don't know, help reorient us to think about something. Western Europe and Africa and Native America, pre-European America, in the North, all really were the same in the sense of, and even if we go back to the Slavs, tribal, clan-based societies that warred among themselves, that shared linguistic and historical links to each other, but didn't necessarily see it that way because there was nothing to unify them. Often these were warring tribes battling it out with each other, okay? And fighting over territory, hunting, nomadic, all of that, okay? And what happens is they, as a dominant tribe, end up invading and attacking Rome, and Rome is going to be able to regroup and eventually push back all the Celts. And what is unique is that when it comes to the Celts and the Germanic people, it's the Romans who mainly write about them. We get an idea about Celts and Germanic tribes from Romans. This is a very biased point of view, and it's through a nation that is fighting them, warring with them, and lumping up certain groups together, essentially not doing a very good job of really helping give a clear sociological, anthropological, historical understanding of these peoples. These peoples, for many of us who are of European descent, this was our people, basically being defined by Romans and called a barbarian. So think about that. Barbarian, in a sense, is the derogatory term given to Europeans by Romans, in which eventually our European ancestors are going to be conquered by Rome and then take up this idea where we actually kind of look down on our pre-Roman, pre-Christian lineage, and henceforth also look down on nations and their quote-unquote barbarian, pre-Christian, pre-civilization lineage. Are you following me on this? Okay. Again, we have not real complete ideas about the Celts, but they're going to get pushed out and were at one time dominant in this Western Europe. This is a modern interpretation from descriptions about how Celts would have looked. They were known to appear quite wild in their appearance. When the Romans went to battle them, they were almost kind of seen as like kind of frightening demon-like, creatures with wild hair and this painting and so forth. So again, think about this notion of being tribal, okay, uncivilized, the barbarian. Okay, if you're of Western European ancestry, you're very likely to have some of this type of ethnic group in your blood, and definitely Germanic. And by the way, the Celts spread out pretty far. They went even as far as Turkey. Okay, so just to give you a brief timeline here, and then we'll move on to the Germanic people. In the 5th century BCE, most of Western Europe was Celtic. Okay, we go as late as 275. They went as far as establishing a state of Galatia in Turkey. Okay, so we're talking about spreading out pretty far. Around 224 to 220 BCE, Rome conquers the Celts. Okay, so around the 3rd century BCE. And around 55 BCE, Rome invades Britain, okay, where the Celts are having a stronghold there, okay? And by 60 CE, okay, Rome is going to start having an assimilation with Celts. You're going to have Celtic peoples who are going to be Romanized and eventually Christianized, okay? And then in the 5th century, when we get to the collapse of Rome and it falls, Rome is just going to just outright leave the British Isles, and the Celtic, Roman, then Christian colonies that are left over with Rome leaving are going to get invaded by some Germanic tribes called the Anglo-Saxons, which is, for a later time as well. Again, that's a lot of little information I'm covering here, just to give you a feel. So I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to discuss Germanic tribes.